Before we start, just a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. Only 2% are subscribed at 1,000 subscribers. I'll be posting a special video. I hate this, I cannot even control what you swallow anymore. That is how he opened lunch, not hi, not how are you. I am Lily, 26, and that line still hits like a punch. Back then I just froze with my menu open, brain static and loud. Now writing this, I can see exactly where I should have walked. The waitress waited beside the table, pen hovering, eyes darting between us. My face burned, but I cleared my throat and ordered the veggie soup slowly. Across from me, Mark shut his menu with a snap, like a small warning. Double cheeseburger, fries, extra sauce, he told her, voice bright and performative. I stared at the water glass, counting bubbles, pretending no one heard the first line. When she left, I finally looked up, heart hammering way too fast for lunch. What does that even mean? You cannot control what I swallow. I tried to make it sound like a joke, light, playful, not freaked. He leaned back and smirked, fingers drumming on the table like some bored drummer. You know what I mean, he said, and that was the whole explanation. Back then I was good at talking myself down from alarms, almost professional. Maybe he is stressed, maybe he is jealous, maybe I am dramatic again. I picked up a sugar packet, turned it between my fingers, bought time. It is just food, I said, voice thin, I feel better without meat. He snorted, a short, ugly sound, then looked around for someone to catch it. You used to be easy, he went on, eyes back on me now. Now you read labels, you make rules, you act like some saint. He said saint like it tasted sour, like it personally wronged him somehow. I laughed, that stupid nervous bark, because I did not know what else. Inside, though, something pinched hard, like a muscle cramp right under my ribs. The soup arrived before I had a decent comeback, which suited him fine. He waited until the bowl landed between us, steam curling up, spoons clinking. Then he leaned in, voice lower, the fake smile gone from his face. When you were not vegetarian, I knew what went into your body. He paused on body, eyes locked on my mouth just long enough to sting. I gripped the spoon too tight, knuckles white, and pretended to focus on broth. That sounds creepy, I said finally, still not meeting his eyes, still stalling. He shrugged and grabbed a fry from my untouched side plate, because of course. Relax, he muttered, you know I like having a say in things. I heard having a say, but my head translated it straight into owning. I tasted the soup more out of spite than hunger, throat tight and dry. He watched each bite like I was failing a test, only he understood. See, he said, mouth twisting, this is exactly the problem with your phase. He called it a phase a lot, like I had signed up for a trend. Once you pick, I cannot use food to steer things anymore. Steer what? I asked, sharper than I meant, spoon clinking hard against porcelain. He smirked again, because he loved when I rose, even a little, to bait. Us, he said, short word, loaded tone, like that explained the whole strategy. You know how it works, I take you out, I order, we both enjoy. The way he spaced that last part out made my stomach twist, not pleasantly. I remembered all the times he ordered for me, like some old movie boyfriend. Back then I thought it was romantic, effort, attention, all that cheesy stuff. Sitting there, I suddenly heard it differently, like a list of small permissions. Well, I am not a menu item, I replied, trying to sound steady, not shaking. I get to decide what goes in my mouth, that is kind of basic. He laughed louder now, making the couple in the next booth glance over briefly. Come on, he said, waving his hand like he dismissed a dramatic teenager. Do not act brand new, you let me make choices for you all the time. The way he emphasized let made my skin crawl like he had rehearsed it. I stared at his hand, the same one that used to feel comforting on my back. Are you seriously mad that I stopped eating meat? I asked, voice low now. Because I needed to hear him say it, needed to know how far this went. He tore his burger wrapper open with this weird, precise anger, like focused rage. I am mad you changed the rules without asking, he answered, eyes sharp, unblinking. You know what I like, what you swallow has always been part of that. The word always lodged in my chest, heavier than I wanted to admit. I replayed our last months in fast flashes, nothing detailed, just impressions and pressure. Him pushing shots across the bar, nudging plates closer, joking about being obedient. It had always been framed as fun, as us, as chemistry, as playful control. Now he was sitting here admitting there were rules I apparently broke. I set the spoon down carefully because my hands were starting to tremble a little. If your rules include my throat, we have a bigger problem than lunch. The sentence came out before I planned it, harsher than my usual peacekeeping tone. He froze for a second, then smiled, slow and tight like a warning light. There it is, he murmured, little Miss Independent now that she found lentils. I wanted to bolt right then, stand up, leave him with his burger. Instead I stayed rooted, cheeks hot, pulse pounding in my ears like a drum. Conflict always made me feel like I was the one misbehaving, even now. So I reached for the soup again, trying to look unbothered, trying to minimize. Being vegetarian is not rebellion, I said, it is literally just lunch. He leaned closer until I could see the tiny scar near his eyebrow, old story. His voice dropped into that low tone he used when he wanted something specific. You think I do not notice, he whispered, eyes on my lips, not my eyes. You stop eating what I bring, next you stop doing other things I like. I flinched before I could stop myself, and that tiny movement made him grin. That was the moment I realized this was not random grumpiness, it was strategy. He was not upset about vegetables, he was upset about leverage, about losing grip. I wish I could tell you I called him out clearly right then. Instead I laughed again, thin and breathless, pretended I had imagined the whole message. Maybe I just want to feel better, I muttered, is that such a crime? He sat back and took a huge bite of his burger, eyes still on me. Grease dripped onto the wrapper, slow and messy, and he did not bother wiping. You feel better when I am in charge, he replied, mouth half full, completely serious. This vegetarian thing is you testing how far you can push me. He said testing like it was betrayal, not a girl choosing soup over meat. The waitress came to check on us, asked if everything was okay with our food. I opened my mouth, then shut it, because how do you answer that cleanly? Mark smiled up at her, charming again, like he could switch channels on command. We are great, he told her, then gave my shoulder a little squeeze for show. I sat there, pinned by his hand, and realized I was the only one drowning. I locked the stall door and finally let my hands shake. My phone buzzed in my pocket, one text after another stacking. I ignored them, watched my fingers hover over the flush handle absurdly long. I kept hearing his line from the table, like it bounced off tiles. The worst part was how some small voice inside still asked if I overreacted. I washed my hands longer than needed, just to steal a breather. In the mirror my face looked fine, which felt almost insulting honestly. If you have ever wanted proof you are not crazy, you know that moment. You stare at yourself and think, if I look normal then maybe I am. I dried my palms on my jeans instead of the dispenser, ready to bolt. When I stepped back into the dining area, he was already standing. 2 to-go bags waited on the table, neatly tied and ready. I asked them to pack it up, he said, voice suddenly gentle again. Thought you might want to eat later if you calm down. That last part landed sharp, like he had just labeled me unstable for dessert. I grabbed my purse and skipped the leftovers, no appetite for trophies. Outside, the air hit colder than when we walked in, or maybe me. He reached for my elbow as we crossed the lot, like I needed guidance. I sidestepped just enough that his fingers brushed air instead of skin. That tiny move changed his whole posture, shoulders tensing like I pulled a knife. You are really going to punish me over one comment, his voice dropped. I stopped by my car and looked straight at him, which I usually avoid. It was not one comment, I answered, keeping my tone flat on purpose. It was you talking about my body like something you manage. He laughed once, short and sharp, like he tasted something bitter on his tongue. You are twisting everything, he threw his hands up, keys jangling too loud. I was talking about us, about how this new thing affects us. He always framed it as us when he actually meant his comfort, I swear. Going meat-free makes you distant, he added like he read from some script. As if refusing steak means refusing me, that leap he never questioned. For a second I almost caved right there, just to end the tension. I could picture myself apologizing, making a joke, scheduling my own surrender. Instead I unlocked my car and pulled the door open, fingers steady enough. I am going home, I said, heart pounding so loudly it felt visible. You can call later if you actually want to talk, not manage. He leaned on the roof near the door, blocking it halfway, not fully. Do not be like this, his voice dropped into that pleading tone he used. You know I only push because I care what you do to yourself. That line made my stomach flip harder than anything from the diner session. Caring and controlling wore the same jacket on him, and I finally noticed the cut. I slid into the driver's seat anyway, forcing him to move or escalate. He hesitated, then stepped back just enough, eyes narrowing with frustrated calculation. Text me when you get in, he added, as if none of it mattered. I shut the door before answering, which was its own small rebellion for me. Through the windshield, he watched until I backed out like I might run. At home, I dropped my keys in the sink and called Mia immediately. She picked up on the second ring, chewing on something, breath loud. So how catastrophic was lunch, she asked, not even bothering with hello. I sat on the floor back against the cabinet, words logjammed in my throat. When I managed to explain the highlights, she went quiet in a very specific way. You realize he linked your mouth to his authority, right? Her voice turned firm. I tried to laugh it off, insisted she was reading more into it than needed. Maybe he was just being dirty and stupid at the same time, I argued weakly. No, she answered clean and fast, that was not innuendo, that was ownership. Hearing the word out loud made my chest tighten, though I still fought it. I wanted her to say I misheard, that it was just crude humor. Instead she asked, has he ever respected a hard no without pouting before? The question landed harder than any advice could, because my brain spun through examples. I saw drinks I never wanted, rides I did not agree to, nights I regretted. I had this awful flash of him smiling while I convinced myself I liked everything. Look, I am not telling you to dump him tonight, she continued carefully. But you need to notice the pattern, you are not crazy for feeling weird. I pressed my forehead against my knees, phone balanced between shoulder and ear. A part of me wanted to hang up and crawl back into denial. Another part was wide awake now, replaying every time he framed control as care. He started blowing up my notifications while I was still on that call. First came a row of question marks, then a fake cheerful selfie, then more. Mia heard the vibration and sighed, long and annoyed, like she had done this before. Let me guess, she asked, now he will switch to gifts or favors. I did not answer, but I knew she was right, because that was his move. I ended the call with some vague promise to keep her updated, which I meant. Then I opened his thread and checked the barrage, fingers hovering over reply. Got home yet? Still mad. Can I come over with something you will actually eat? That last one made my gut clench because I could already see the play. He would show up with bags, call it compromise, try to rewrite the afternoon. I stared at the screen, then typed, not tonight, I need space to think. The three dots appeared almost instantly, then vanished, then popped back like he paced. Fine, he finally sent, but do not let anyone fill your head. That line, more than anything at lunch, tipped something inside me off balance. He did not say friends, he said anyone, like my brain belonged under his lock. I tossed my phone on the couch and walked into the kitchen, pacing tight. Food felt impossible, everything felt too loaded, even a glass of water felt symbolic. Somewhere between steps I realized he hated that I had found a boundary he could not touch. I wish I could claim I held that realization like a shield all night. Truth is, around midnight, loneliness crept in and the doubt followed behind. What if I had overreacted? What if I made him out worse than he was? That is the ugly part nobody likes to admit, the way we rewrite harm to stay. I scrolled our older photos to punish myself a little, which I do sometimes. There we were at barbecues, on couches, always with him offering something to my mouth. Chicken wings, cocktails, little bites he chose, always framed as playful intimacy and trust. Back then I thought it was cute that he learned my favorite flavors. Now the images looked like tiny lessons, him training me to open on command. My phone buzzed again around 1, and I checked despite every promise to ignore. This time it was a longer message, more measured, like he rewrote it a few times. He apologized for the tone at lunch, not the content, which I clocked immediately. He wrote that he missed how we used to be and that my diet shift scared him. The words diet shift felt clinical, like he file-labeled my choice as an illness. At the end he added one more line. Just remember, when you change what you take in, you change what we are. I stared at that sentence until the letters blurred, anger mixing with something else. On the surface it sounded profound, underneath it sounded like a threat with good grammar. Back then I still tried to read it as clumsy love, not control with a bow. I did not answer, which for me was huge because I usually fold quickly. Instead I turned off notifications and lay there in the dark, eyes open. I replayed Mia's question again. Has he ever accepted a boundary without sulking or twisting it? The answer sat heavy, and it would only get heavier in the nights ahead. He texted a photo of a saucepan and wrote, "Truce dinner tonight." Before I could decide, my doorbell rang, his timing way too perfect. When I opened up, he raised two heavy bags like some peace flag. "I brought stuff for you," he said, voice light, eyes already scanning inside. I should have turned him away right there, but I stepped back and let him through. He headed straight for the kitchen like it belonged to him automatically. "Relax," he said, dropping the bags. I googled a bunch of plant recipes. The way he said plant made my teeth clench, like he tasted something sour. He pulled out boxes and jars with a flourish, none labeled clearly from my angle. "Tonight is about you trusting me again," he added, which was not comforting at all. I hovered by the counter, arms folded, trying not to crowd or retreat. "So you are making everything without animal stuff?" I asked, slow on purpose. He flashed that practiced grin, busy tearing open a packet with his knuckles. "Completely friendly for your new lifestyle," he answered, giving the last word a little twist. My chest tightened anyway, because his jokes always hid something sharper underneath. He filled a pot with water and bumped my hip to move me aside. "Go sit," he said, "let me take care of you for once." That "for once" landed hard, like he believed I did nothing for him ever. I stayed where I was, fingers tapping the counter, watching every move he made. He noticed, laughed, and shook his head like I was a suspicious child. "You are watching me like I am poisoning you," he tossed a box into the pot. "If you cannot even let me cook, we have a bigger situation than food." Hearing that, I forced myself to lean back a little, even though I hated it. I hated how easily he flipped things, turning my caution into some relationship crime. "Just want to be sure," I murmured, and he smirked like he had already won. He moved closer, wiped an imaginary speck from my cheek with his thumb. "You used to just open your mouth and enjoy," he murmured, breath hot with confidence. "Now you read every label like you're scared of me." That sentence was dressed as a joke, but his stare stayed hard. My stomach dropped again, same familiar plunge, like stepping on a missing stair. He lifted a spoonful of sauce toward my lips, testing me. "Preview," he said, tilting it, "tell me if the seasoning works for you." My brain flashed through Mia's voice, through that diner booth, through every weird comment. I turned my head, let the spoon hang in the air between us. "Played it first," I answered, trying to sound casual, not like sirens screamed inside. His eyes narrowed for a heartbeat, then he chuckled and turned back to the stove. "Fine," he said, "we will do this your cautious way tonight." He stirred with extra force, shoulders tight, jaw working like he chewed invisible gum. Every motion looked like he argued with someone, probably me, probably in advance. I stood there wondering why I felt guilty for not swallowing on command. 10 minutes later he set a deep bowl in front of me, proud and expectant. "All vegetables," he announced, dropping into his chair, "special for my careful girl." Steam rose between us, hiding his face for a second, buying me one breath. I twirled the pasta once, raised it, hesitated, then finally took a small bite. The taste hit wrong immediately, heavy and greasy underneath the tomato flavor. I put the fork down, pulse spiking, tongue working over my teeth nervously. "There is animal fat in this," I said, more sure than I wished. He froze, then shrugged, then grabbed his own fork, way too dramatic about it. "Impossible," he answered, shoveling a big portion into his mouth like proof. He chewed with exaggerated pleasure, then waved his fork at me like I was silly. I took another tiny bite, because part of me still wanted to be wrong. Nope, that was unmistakable, that rich taste I had been avoiding for weeks. What did you use for the base? I asked, keeping my tone flat and slow. He glanced at the counter only for a second, and my eyes followed. A crumpled wrapper near the stove, red sausage crumbles in clear letters. My chair scraped back hard as I stood, pulse roaring in my ears. You told me this was plant-based, I said, voice lower than usual. His expression shifted fast, surprise to annoyance to that bored look he loved. It is mostly vegetables, he answered, lifting his shoulders like that solved anything. You act like one tiny ingredient is a moral crime now. One tiny ingredient you hid from me, I answered, gripping the back of the chair. You knew exactly what you were doing when you stuffed that packet in. He huffed, stabbed another forkful, and leaned back like he watched a show. I wanted you to remember you enjoy flavor, he said, tone suddenly smooth. You did not flinch until I told you. So your body clearly approves. That sentence made my skin crawl from neck to wrists, everything buzzing. You do not get to test me without consent, I answered, each word deliberate. He laughed low and mean, eyes dropping to my mouth again, not subtle. I test you in other ways all the time, he murmured, licking sauce from his fork. You have never complained when it is not related to vegetables. I pushed the bowl away, the spoon clattering against the rim loudly. This is not about vegetables, I said, hands shaking despite how hard I tried. This is about you deciding what goes inside me without telling me first. He stood up slowly, palms flat on the table, leaning in across the space. That is exactly my point, he replied like he had just won an argument. When you switched your eating, you took something away from us, he continued. I used to know every taste you accepted, every texture you would take. He tapped one finger against the table with each word, keeping rhythm. Now you draw lines without asking, and I lose my favorite leverage. He finally said it out loud, not that actual word, but close enough to sting. I stepped around the chair, needing distance, needing any barrier between us. He mirrored my movement, circling, closing the gap again like this was a dance. You are being extreme, he said, reaching for my wrist, fingers brushing skin. I pulled back before he could grip, heart slamming, chest tight and hot. If you lie about food, what else are you willing to sneak past me? He rolled his eyes at that, like I had told a bad joke. It is dinner, not a contract, he said, walking toward the sink with my bowl. He emptied it in one motion, then turned with a sharp smile. See, nothing happened, you are still fine, drama cancelled. My jaw clenched so hard it almost hurt, because something had definitely happened. I grabbed my bag from the chair where I left it, fingers clumsy. He noticed and moved toward the doorway, not quite blocking it, not quite clearing. Where are you going? His voice cut through the tension, softer but edged. Back to my own place, I answered, forcing myself to hold his stare. Somewhere nobody tampers with my boundaries, or my plate, or my mouth. He laughed again, though this one sounded thinner, less sure, a little desperate. So this is it, he asked, stepping closer. We break up over ingredients. I shook my head, which made his face twist like he lost the script. We are not breaking over ingredients, I answered, we are breaking over control. He exhaled hard, grabbed the doorframe, and for a second I thought he might slam it. Instead he leaned in close, so close I could feel each breath. You think walking out means you are untouchable, he whispered, tone almost playful. You will still remember everything I trained you to like. That line hit me lower than my stomach, hot and cold at once. I stepped back, hand on the knob, suddenly more awake than I had been all year. I opened the door and stepped into the hallway, heart banging against my ribs. Behind me, I heard the soft thud of his hand hitting the wood. Text me when you stop being stubborn, drifted out after me, sharp as broken glass. I did not answer, did not turn, just kept walking until the elevator doors closed. Only then did I realize my teeth were clenched so tight my head hurt. Tell them you will try a wing for me. That was the first thing he whispered as we squeezed through the doorway. His arm tightened around my waist, fingers digging just enough to register. Music boomed from the living room, people shouted over it, eyes already turning. I knew right then this night was not about a birthday at all. He steered me toward the kitchen, where everyone crowded around the table. Plates of greasy food sat in the middle, meat piled up, no options for me. Guys, this is my girl, he called out, loud enough to cut through noise. She used to be fun, now she reads ingredient lists like scripture. The group laughed and looked me over like I was a weird experiment. I forced a smile and reached for a plain chip, something safe and bland. One of his friends waved a drumstick near my face, wiggling it like bait. "Come on, one bite for old times," he joked, eyes flicking to my boyfriend. I leaned back until my shoulders hit the fridge, nowhere else to slide. My boyfriend watched closely, waiting to see if I obeyed in front of them. "I am not eating that," I said, steady enough that my throat felt scraped. The friend shrugged and took a bite himself, grease running down his wrist. My boyfriend laughed, clapped his friend on the back, acting like this was harmless. Then he hooked a thumb at me and added one more line. "She only takes in things she can justify now, kills the vibe." The words landed heavier than the noise around us, heavy enough to cut through. A few people looked away, some smirked, one girl raised her eyebrows at me. I felt my face heat up, stomach clench, fingers curl around the plastic cup. He watched every reaction with bright interest, like he tracked the effect. I realized he wanted them in on it, wanted witnesses to my embarrassment. I put the cup down and touched his wrist lightly, just enough pressure. "Can we talk somewhere else?" I asked, forcing my voice to stay even. He exhaled like I had asked him to leave the country, not the room. Still, he followed me down the hallway toward the bathroom, feet dragging. Every step felt like walking deeper into something I already knew would explode. In the narrow space near the door, I turned and folded my arms. "What was that in there?" I asked, pulse jumping against my collarbone. He shrugged, leaning against the wall, head tipped back like bored royalty. "I made a joke," he answered. "You are the one turning it into drama." That word again always dropped on my side of the scale. "You talked about what I put in my body in front of strangers." My voice came out low, not loud, which somehow made it hit harder. "You know exactly what you were hinting at, do not play dumb with me." He pushed off the wall, stepped closer, breath sweet with beer and sauce. "If it upset you so much, maybe you should loosen up a little." I laughed, that short, ugly one I hate, just to keep from yelling. "You tricked me with meat at your place, and now you want to repeat." He rolled his eyes and made a face like I had brought up ancient history. "We are at a party," he muttered. "You do not need to police everything." Hearing him call my own limits policing made something snap inside my chest. "You asked them to pressure me," I pointed back toward the kitchen door. "You wanted a scene where I prove I am still obedient in public." He flinched almost invisibly at the word obedient, then fixed his expression again. "Do not flatter yourself," he replied. "Nobody is thinking that deeply about you." The second the words left his mouth, I saw he realized they were too far. He reached for my arm, gentler this time, thumb rubbing slow circles. "Look," his voice softened, "they just remember the old you who would go along." I stared at his hand moving on my skin, every pass more unwelcome. "You mean the version who never said no because you prepped her first?" The silence after that hung sharp because we both knew the answer. He glanced back toward the noise, then back at me, torn between audiences. "Of course I used food and drinks to set the mood," he finally muttered. "Every guy does, that is how nights go, stop acting shocked now." My stomach dropped again, that same stupid free fall I kept hoping would stop. "I liked being the one who knew what would get you relaxed," he added. There it was, finally spoken without decoration, straight and ugly. He did not want companionship, he wanted a control panel disguised as date night. "You are angry because you cannot warm me up on your terms anymore." I said it slowly, testing the shape of the thought out loud. He stared at me, jaw tight, then gave a tiny bitter smile that scared me. "You pulled the plug on one of the only ways I could steer things." His words came out calm, almost reflective, like he did not hear himself. "Now you have rules about flavors and textures and everything else follows." He shook his head once like he admired my stubbornness, not resented it. "Do you really think that will not bleed into the rest of our life?" The hallway felt narrower with every sentence, air heavier, options thinner. "So because I stop eating something you lose a handle on me?" I asked. He nodded once, no hesitation, as if this were a rational admission. "It used to be simple," he replied. "I bring the right things, you yield." His eyes flicked to my mouth again, quick and charged, and I felt sick. I stepped back until my shoulders met the opposite wall, needing distance again. That is not romance, I said, voice scraping itself together between breaths. That is you training me to react on cue like some private trick. He flinched harder at the word training than obedience, which told me enough. I liked our routine, he answered. You are the one trying to rewrite everything. Someone pushed past us toward the bathroom, muttering an apology, breaking the stare. We moved aside automatically, bodies separating for the first time all night. I watched the door close between us and that stranger, felt a weird clarity. You know what scares you? I asked quietly, forcing him to meet my eyes. That if you cannot direct what I take in, you might not be able to direct what I give. His tongue pressed against his cheek, a habit he had when annoyed. You are overcomplicating this, he finally answered. It is just better when I lead. I almost laughed because he sounded like a workshop brochure for controlling partners. You do not lead, I said, you override, then call it guidance so I feel special. He opened his mouth. Closed it, then dropped his gaze to the floor. From the kitchen, someone shouted his name, asking where the birthday shots were. He glanced over his shoulder, torn, then turned back with that party smile again. If you walk out now, you make me look abandoned, he warned quietly. People will ask why you left, and I do not want to trash you. The threat sat right there under the surface, soft voice, sharp meaning. You are worried about your image, not my limits, I answered, chest tight. Stay if you want, I am not staying to be your prop. I straightened, fixed my shirt, and moved past him toward the front door. He caught my wrist lightly, fingers barely closing, one last attempt. Think about what you are throwing away over salad rules, he breathed. That line almost made me laugh, almost made me cry, maybe both. Salad rules. That was what he shrank my decision down to in the end. I am throwing away a situation where my body is a bargaining chip, I replied. I peeled his hand off my skin one finger at a time and walked away. As I stepped into the night air, noise from the party spilled out. Someone cheered, someone yelled for more wings, life going on without us. My phone buzzed, already in my pocket, his name bright on the screen. I did not answer, not yet, not while my pulse still hammered from the hallway. I knew he would not let the conversation end there, and that scared me more than anything. The slice of roast landed on my plate before I finished saying no. His mother moved fast, wrist practiced, knife already reaching back toward the serving dish. I worked hard on this, she told me, smiling tight, not really asking anything. You can treat yourself for one evening, you are not in a cult. The smell hit me and my throat clenched so hard I almost coughed. I glanced toward him, expecting backup at least once in this whole circus. He kept his eyes on his beer, jaw moving slow, pretending to study the label. She bends her rules sometimes, he announced, still not looking at me, voice light. She likes to make a big show first, then she gives in. That line punched harder than anything his mother had just done to my plate. His father chuckled, lifting his drink like he toasted the whole performance. Everyone brags about being picky until they get hungry enough, he threw in. Laughter rippled around the table, small but pointed, like tiny jabs in sequence. I felt heat crawl up my neck, not from the food, from humiliation. It hit me that they had talked about me before this dinner even started. I pushed the plate a few inches away, fingers shaking under the table. I am not having that, I told the plate first, then the room. I came over, I appreciate the invitation, but I am not eating animals. His mother froze mid-carve, knife hovering above the board, eyes snapping to me. Across from me, he finally looked up, expression already annoyed that I complicated things. Do not be rude, his mother warned, her smile dropping like a curtain on cue. People cook for you, you accept it, that is basic manners in this house. Her words hit that part of me that hates disappointing adults, even now. I could feel myself shrinking in my chair, shoulders curling in without permission. He watched that happen with a strange calm, like he enjoyed the view. He reached under the table and squeezed my knee, firm and controlling. Just try a forkful, he murmured, eyes steady on mine now, tone coaxing. You can go back to your regular thing tomorrow, nobody will die. That last part made me flinch, because of how casual he was about my line. I realized this was never supposed to be a meal, it was a test. I took a breath that felt too loud in my own ears, chest tight. If I put that in my mouth tonight, I am telling you something. I spoke quietly, but every person at that table could hear me clearly. I am telling you my limits only count when they do not bother you. Forks went still, eyes bounced between us, and he tightened his grip on my leg. Enough, his father snapped, leaning back, clearly tired of the tension. You are overdoing it. It is just dinner, not a court case or protest. I stared at him, then at the meat, then back at my boyfriend. He still had not pulled his hand away, thumb rubbing small circles through my jeans. That tiny motion suddenly felt more invasive than a full grab. You told them I cheat on this, I asked him, ignoring everyone else completely. You told them I pretend to care, then cave when you push hard enough. His mouth twitched, caught between a smirk and something harsher he would not show here. They know you, he answered, shrugging like that excused anything, eyes flat. They know you like to act strict, but you loosen up once you get going. I swear my ribs locked around my heart at that choice of words. Once you get going. That was not about food, and we both knew it. He had just translated our bedroom dynamic into table talk. An expected applause. I suddenly felt like every swallow I had ever done was under review here. Stop talking about me like I am your pet project, I managed, voice raw. I decide what I swallow, I decide when, I decide why. His mother gasped at that wording, like I had said something filthy on her linens. His father gave a low whistle and muttered something about modern girls under his breath. My boyfriend spread his hands like I had proven his entire point in one sentence. See, he told his parents, almost laughing, this is what I have been dealing with. She turned her diet thing into a whole power struggle like I am the enemy. I stared at him stunned because that flip was Olympic-level manipulative. You ever have a moment where your brain just goes quiet from overload? That was me then, everything caught me, except the burning in my face. His mother planted both hands on the table and leaned in my direction. Relationships require give and take, she lectured, eyes drilling into my forehead. You cannot just declare rules and expect the man to adjust for every whim. Each word landed like I was 12 and had broken some stupid household restriction. Nobody at that table cared that my only rule was about my own body. I turned my fork upside down and pressed the tip into the tablecloth. If I eat that, am I easier to manage again? I asked quietly. Nobody answered right away, which was my answer even before anyone spoke. My boyfriend dropped his gaze to my lips, not my eyes again. The air felt heavy with everything we were not saying directly. He cleared his throat and went for charm again, like he always did. Look, you are making them think I am some villain because you changed menus. He laughed weakly, shoulders stiff, pretending this was all blown out of proportion. Just show them you still trust me, that we still work the same way. We both knew exactly what working the same way meant, and it was not about dinner. Trust would have been you warning them I do not eat this, I answered. Trust would have been you telling them I am serious, not mocking me behind my back. My voice climbed without my permission, hands now shaking where everyone could see. His father rolled his eyes and picked up his glass again, muttering about drama. His mother watched me like she judged whether I belonged in their family at all. Finally, I pushed my chair back, the legs scraping loud over the floor. I stood and picked up the plate with the slice still untouched on it. His mother opened her mouth to protest, but I walked past her toward the sink. I tipped the meat into the trash and set the empty plate aside. My hands were trembling so hard I had to grip the edge of the counter. Behind me, chairs shifted and someone cursed under their breath, low and irritated. He appeared at my shoulder, voice tight, trying to stay in control for his parents. What are you doing? He hissed, keeping it quiet for their sake, not mine. Do you realize how disrespectful that looked after they invited you here? I turned to face him, and for once I did not shrink. I am refusing to be fed like I am an object you manage, I told him. I am not going to open up on command just to prove you still have pull. His eyes flashed and he stepped closer, lowering his head to mine. You are blowing this up over preferences, he whispered, lips barely moving. You keep acting like control is a dirty word when it used to turn you on. There it was again, our private life thrown in the ring as evidence. And yes, I had gone along before, I am not pretending I never cooperated. Back then I convinced myself it was passion, not training that is on me. But standing there next to his family trash can, I finally saw the pattern. He wanted that same access without any negotiation forever. His mother called from the table, voice sharp, asking if everything was resolved. He straightened, gave her a thumbs up, plastered that charming mask back on. "We are fine," he answered, then lowered his face to mine again. "Go sit down and eat salad like you wanted, just stop making a scene." The word scene made my shoulders lock because I knew that trick well. "Me standing up is not a scene, your ambush was," I replied. "If I sit there smiling, I am telling all of you my choices are jokes." His jaw clenched hard enough that a muscle in his cheek jumped. "You are not walking out on my family mid-meal," he warned, voice low. "That would prove to them you cannot handle adult compromise." I brushed past him toward the doorway, heart thudding, knees weirdly light. "I can handle compromise," I said, not slowing until I reached the hall. "I will not handle you trading my boundaries for their approval." He followed, steps heavy, fingers catching my wrist near the entryway. His grip was firm this time, no soft circles, just pressure. "Stop," he demanded, eyes darker than I had seen at the party. "You are not thinking. G straight, you are letting whoever fill your head again." He meant Mia, obviously, like she was some poison rather than my reality check. I tugged once, he tightened his hold, and something sharp rose in my chest. There is a very particular fear when someone you know will not let go. "Let go of my arm," I said, every word spaced out and solid. "If you want even a chance at fixing this later, release me now." For a second he did not move, testing how far he could push. His father's chair scraped behind us, a reminder that we had an audience. He finally dropped his hand, more for them than for me. "So you are ending this over food?" he asked, bitter laugh under the question. I grabbed my bag from the small table by the door, fingers steady. "I am ending this over you needing to govern what I put inside myself," I answered. "Tonight just proved it is not a misunderstanding, it is your whole playbook." His mouth opened and closed once, words failing him for the first time. "You will regret walking away from someone who knows you this well," he threw out. I paused with my hand on the knob, just long enough to actually consider that. Yeah, he did know me, which buttons to hit, which insecurities to poke. That was exactly the problem, knowing me did not mean respecting me for him. I opened the door and stepped out before I could start doubting again. As it swung shut behind me, I heard his mother whisper something sharp. I caught only fragments, words like ungrateful and difficult drifting through the wood. For once, the shame did not rush in and swallow me whole. I felt it hover at the edge, waiting, then slide off when I kept walking. I did not know it yet, but that was the last meal I would ever share with him. I hit block right as his new text lit the screen. My thumb hesitated for half a second, then pressed anyway, heartbeat kicking. For a moment the chat froze on his last line, half cut by the overlay. "If you eat like this without me, it means I never really had you." I stared at that sentence until the app flicked him into silence. My stomach knotted, not from hunger, from that familiar mix of anger and doubt. You know that feeling when your body knows something is off but your brain argues. Part of me still wanted to answer, to explain, to fix his version. The louder part finally whispered that explaining had become its own trap. I locked the screen and tossed the phone on the couch like it burned. The quiet in my apartment felt too sharp, so I went straight to the kitchen. I filled a pot with water, dropped in pasta, more forceful than needed. It sounds stupid, but I wanted to cook in front of absolutely nobody. No one watching, no one checking spices, no one timing my bites against anything. Every clatter of metal against metal reminded me of his stove and that hidden meat. As the water rolled, my thoughts did that messy thing they always do. I kept trying to remember the first time he connected food to sex. Not a general memory, a specific night, a clear moment, something solid. The harder I searched, the more the scenes blurred into one long reel. Different outfits, different dinners, same pattern, him offering things and me opening up. I drained the pasta, poured sauce from a jar, tossed everything together lazily. No performance, no garnish, no plates balanced on thighs while he watched me chew. I took one bite leaning against the counter, chewing slowly, listening to myself swallow. It sounds dramatic, I know, but that simple swallow felt different now. For once it was not proof of anything to anyone else, just mine. My phone buzzed on the couch again, even though I had blocked his number. For a second my heart jumped, because that is how my nerves operate. Turned out it was Mia, sending 3 rapid messages in a row. Did you make it home? Are you alone? Do I need to come kick somebody? I called instead of typing because my hands still shook a little. She picked up with that instant alert voice like she had been waiting. How bad was it? She asked, skipping all the formalities on purpose. I exhaled and told her I walked out in front of his family. The words sounded bigger out loud than they had in my head. She let out a low whistle and then a soft, proud sort of laugh. Okay, look at you actually choosing yourself, she said, voice warm now. I wanted to bask in that for a second, but guilt pushed up fast. I dumped him in his parents' house, I blurted. They think I am awful. She paused, then asked the question that mattered more than their opinion. Did you lie about what you could handle tonight? I said no. Did you let him decide your limit for you again? I said no. Then why are you more worried about being nice than being safe? That hit me deep, deeper than I wanted to admit even then. I leaned my head against the cabinet and let the silence stretch a moment. I blocked him, I finally confessed, almost whispering like I had. Broken a lot. Good, she replied, no hesitation. Now keep him blocked when the loneliness kicks in. She knew me too well, especially that late-night window when resolve tends to melt. After we hung up, the apartment felt different, not bigger, not smaller, just mine. No one texting instructions, no one timing when I answered, no one tracking meals. I poured the rest of the pasta into a container and put it away. There is something weirdly grounding about saving leftovers when nobody watched. For once I was planning around my own hunger, not his schedule. Of course, blocking him on the phone did not stop everything. The next day he popped up in my social media requests with a new account. Same profile photo, slightly altered username like he thought I would not notice. The first message came in hot. So we are done over vegetables and dramatics, that is the story now. I watched the typing bubble appear and vanish while I debated answering. Curiosity won for one stupid moment, and I opened the thread fully. What you eat became a symbol, we both know that, his next line read. You used it to prove you could refuse me, that is what hurt. Seeing him spell it out like that made my skin prickle. I typed slowly, making myself breathe between every word, not rushing. I refused what you snuck in and what you planned without asking me. You are upset that you cannot script my reactions anymore, not that I changed menus. The dots appeared again, then stopped, then started, like he paced behind the screen. I almost felt bad for him for 1 second, then remembered his mother smirking. His reply came shorter this time, every word trimmed down to bare bone. You loved it when I directed things before, do not rewrite history now. You enjoyed following my cues until you found a way to punish me. The phrase punish me sat there, bold, like I had orchestrated some scheme. I realized he genuinely believed my boundaries were an attack. My fingers hovered over the screen, tempted to write a long essay. You ever feel that urge to defend every inch of your timeline? To dig through years and lay out screenshots of every tiny moment? I almost did it, almost played lawyer in my own emotional case. Instead, I deleted the half paragraph and sent one single line. Even when I enjoyed parts of it, it was still my call, not yours. He read it instantly, the little scene marker popping up beneath the bubble. Nothing came back right away, which almost bothered me more than his usual barrage. I pictured him reading that sentence over and over, not liking the mirror. After a few minutes, another notification popped up from his new account. You changing to this plant stuff was you saying my influence is over. Do not pretend it is about your health, it is about control. I stared at those lines and something almost funny moved through me. He was right and wrong at the same time, which is the uncomfortable truth. It was about health and about taking my body back from his fingerprints. I blocked that account too, faster this time, less ceremony. No screenshot, no reread, just a quick tap and gone. You would think that felt triumphant, but it was more like ripping a bandage. Underneath was raw skin, sure, but at least it could start repairing. It is hard to admit you let someone manage you that much. A week later, the withdrawals hit, not for him exactly, for the pattern. I would walk into my kitchen and half expect his voice critiquing my choices. At the store, my hand hovered near products he liked before shifting away. Every little decision suddenly felt heavier, like I had to prove a point. I had to keep reminding myself that freedom can feel like loss at first. One afternoon, I stood in front of a food truck, completely stuck. The menu offered one veggie item and one with layered meat and sauce. Old me with him would have looked at him, waited for a nod either way. Current me stared at both options and felt this ridiculous wave of anxiety. It was just lunch, but also not just lunch, if that makes sense. I took a breath, ordered the plant-based taco, and stepped aside to wait. Nobody rolled their eyes, nobody commented, nobody monitored how big my bites were. I lifted it, took a mouthful, and paid attention only to my own reaction. Did I like it? Did it sit right? Did it feel honest in my body? The answer was yes, in a quiet way that settled rather than whipped me up. As I chewed, my phone buzzed with a notification from a different app. A mutual friend had tagged me in a group photo from his birthday party. There he was on the far side, arm around some new girl, drink held high. Her eyes were on him like mine used to be, trusting, amused, wide open. I caught myself wondering how much he controlled their evenings already. My brain tried to slide into jealousy, but something else cut in instead. More like dread for her, or maybe recognition, I am not sure. The caption under the P. Hodo read, "He always knows how to show us a good time." Yeah, I thought, he does know how to shape a night to his liking. I hoped, honestly, that she had stronger lines than I did when it started. That night I sat on my couch with my laptop open, screen bright. I typed the heading for a new post and stared at the blinking cursor. My boyfriend hated me going vegetarian because he lost a way to run me. It looked harsh written out, but anything softer would have been a lie. I started to write and stopped 3 times, embarrassed by my own gullibility. Then I thought about that table at his parents' place, about his hand. I thought about his messages insisting my choices were weapons, not boundaries. I thought about every time he monitored my mouth like it was his property. And I thought about anyone reading who might still be convincing herself it was romance. So I kept going even when my fingers shook, even when my face heated alone. Typing it all out forced me to watch the pattern I had been ducking. Every taste this, every do it for me, every you liked it before. Individually they looked small, stitched together they formed something ugly and clear. It hit me that the vegetarian part was never the problem in his mind. The problem was that for the first time I had a limit he could not swallow for me. By the time I finished, my eyes felt dry and my shoulders ached. I hovered over the post button like I had overblock, nerves jangling. You know that jump between keeping a story private and letting strangers see it. It feels like stepping off a curb you suddenly realize is higher than usual. I clicked anyway. Afterward, I sat there listening to the quiet hum from the fridge. My phone started pinging softly, comments trickling in from people I would never meet. Some shared their own stories, some called it controlling, some used words I had avoided. One line stood out, from someone whose username I already forgot. He did not dislike your diet, he disliked your autonomy. I locked my phone and went back to the kitchen one more time. There was leftover pasta from a new batch I had made earlier. I scooped some into a bowl, heated it up, stood at the counter again. I took a bite without performing, without proving, without bracing for a reaction. For the first time in a long time, what I let past my lips belonged entirely to me.